Sidney Weinberg of Goldman Sachs, Richard Mellon of the Mellon Bank, and Lester Armour of City National Bank, a Chicago firm that later merged into J.P. Morgan Chase. The WCC became instrumental in the CIA by providing the funds to Sicilian bandit Salvatore Giuliano to conduct the May Day massacre in Portella della Ginestra, which killed 11 supporters of the Italian Communist Party and wounded 57. The creation of the CIA. At the end of the Good War, Wild Bill Donovan, along with members of the Council on Foreign Relations, drafted plans to create a post-war Central Intelligence Agency that would become known as the CIA. Aware of these plans, Hallowell came up with another brainstorm, a surefire means of gaining funding for covert operations. The new agency, he realized, could obtain cold cash by adopting the same measures of General Chang. It could supply smack to blacks in America's ghettos. World War II had disrupted international shipping and imposed tight waterfront security that made smuggling of heroin into the United States almost impossible. Heroin supplies were small, and international crime syndicates fell into disarray. But opiates were becoming the rage of the jazz scene in Harlem, and the demand for China White was increasing day by day among black musicians in New York, where a hit could cost as much as $100. Hallowell, in dealing with Du Yue Sheng and other drug lords in Burma, was keenly aware of this fact. For blacks only. The notion wasn't out of line with OSS protocol. Hallowell and his Army intelligence buddies in China were already involved in providing shipments of opium to General Chang and 3 sticky brown bars to Burmese addicts, who could provide information concerning the military plans of Chairman Mao. If similar bars could be made available to inner-city black dealers at rock-bottom rates, then the market could be cornered, and the demand could be caused to increase in an exponential manner. Hallowell knew that a drug epidemic might arise, but, he reasoned, the problem would remain confined to the lowest strata of society, with little impact on the white middle-class America. Hallowell's plan was adopted, and working with Lucky Luciano, Joe Adonis, Santo Trafficante, and other members of the Italian Mafia, a shipment of heroin flowed into New York City during the summer of 1947. The 200 kilos of heroin for the test run would come from Schiaparelli, one of Italy's most respected pharmaceutical companies. The product would be shipped by the Sicilian mob in crates of oranges. Half of the oranges in the crates would be made of wax and stuffed with 100 grams of pure heroin. Additional heroin would be packed in cans of sardines, wheels of Caciocavallo cheese, and barrels of olive oil. Within Cuba, the heroin would be cut in laboratories under the control of the Trafficante clan. The drugs would be shipped to New York for distribution by Vito Genovese and his clan in the jazz clubs of Harlem. The future of the CIA was no longer in jeopardy. Hallowell's analysis had been correct. The jazz clubs were the perfect spots to peddle the product. Soon, some of the country's leading black musicians, Billie Holiday, Carl Drinkard, Count Basie's piano player, Theodore Fats Navarro, and Charlie Parker, became hopeless junkies who would die by overdose. Regarding this development, Harry Anslinger, then head of the Bureau of Narcotics, said, "Jazz entertainers are neither fish nor fowl. They do not get the $1 million protection Hollywood and Broadway can afford for their stars who have become addicted, and there are many more than will ever be revealed. Perhaps this is because jazz, once considered a decadent kind of music, has only token respectability. Jazz grew up next door to crime, so to speak. Clubs of dubious reputations were, for a long time, the only places where it could be heard." Mob connections. Nelson Rockefeller's role in forging an alliance between the Luciano crime family and the new intelligence agency should not be underestimated. In 1935, Nelson secured the services of the mob when he took over the construction of Rockefeller Center in the midst of downtown Manhattan. When the laborers began to rebel against the wages set by the National Recovery Administration at $15 for a 48-hour work week, Joe Adonis, a leader of Murder, Inc., was assigned the task of convincing the workers that they really didn't want a wage increase. Visits were made to the homes of the more vocal protesters. Knuckles were smashed, and lives were threatened. The efforts of Adonis resulted in overwhelming success. A relationship had been made that would be of inestimable value to the Rockefeller family. A Rockefeller legacy. Since heroin throughout the post-war period, the Rockefellers remained deeply involved in the drug trade. During the Vietnam era, the Nugan Hand Bank had been established by the agency in Sydney, Australia, to purchase weapons for guerrilla forces in Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Brazil, and the white Rhodesian government of Ian Smith, and to import heroin into Australia from the Golden Triangle of Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar, Burma. The primary shareholder of the Nugan Hand Bank was Australian Pacific Holdings, a company that was owned and operated by the Rockefellers' Chase Manhattan Bank. By 1974, the Australian bank was doing billions in business. The heroin flowing into the United States at the Andrews Air Force Bank and other military installations within the body bags of dead soldiers had produced a heroin epidemic that spread from the ghettos to the staid neighborhoods of suburbia. The Saudi oil. While the good war was still raging, the Rockefellers began to develop the oil fields of Saudi Arabia for Standard Oil of California. For his good graces, the Rockefellers arranged for King Ibn Saud to receive $30 million from the U.S. Treasury. The money was spent to provide support for the king, his 450 wives, and his 100 children. The king was granted other gifts from the American public, including multi-million-dollar airplanes and all-expense-paid tours of the United States for himself, his 45 sons, and his numerous retinues. In addition, the Rockefellers obtained for King Saud a loan of $25 million of taxpayers' money from the Export-Import Bank to build a royal railroad from the Persian Gulf to his summer palace at Riyadh. The venture was incredibly profitable. Aramco, the Arabian-American oil company, that Standard Oil established with the Saud dynasty, was soon shipping 850,000 barrels of oil a day to countries throughout the world. The value of these shipments amounted to $2 million a day tax-free for the Rockefeller Empire. Price gouging. Standard Oil sold the Saudi oil to the British Navy at 40 cents a barrel for fuel oil and 75 cents a barrel for diesel oil. The company more than doubled the price for the U.S. Navy, charging $1.05 a barrel for fuel oil and $1.68 a barrel for diesel. After the war, a Senate investigative committee concluded that these prices amounted to an overcharge of $68 million. Moreover, it was also discovered that the oil provided to the U.S. Navy was of inferior quality. The Marshall Plan. Even after the war, the greed of the Rockefellers proved to be insatiable. In 1948, the Rockefellers and their associates within the Council on Foreign Relations were instrumental in the establishment and implementation of the Marshall Plan, a $12 billion, $100 billion in 2019, initiative to rebuild war-ravaged Western Europe. The plan's directors included Dean Acheson, Nelson's close associate from the Roosevelt administration, CFR President Allen Dulles, Winthrop Aldrich, son of Nelson Aldrich, one of the founders of the Fed, Alger Hiss, president of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace that acted in league with the Rockefeller Foundation; Philip Reed, president of General Electric, in which the Rockefellers held principal interest; and Frank Altschul, an executive for Standard Oil. On December 13, 1949, the Chicago Tribune published an editorial with the title "Rockefeller Profits from the Marshall Plan." The editorial noted the key role the Rockefellers played in obtaining congressional approval of the plan, and went on to reveal the means by which they collected payment after payment for the same product within the first 45 days of the plan's implementation. It read, "Anglo-American Oil Company, Ltd., 100% owned British subsidiary of the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey, purchased from two other wholly owned subsidiaries of the same company, the Esso Export Corporation and the Standard Oil Export Corporation, $7,258,332 worth of products that were paid out of ECA funds." ECA, the Economic Cooperation Administration, was set up to oversee the Marshall Plan. The transaction, which was in effect merely a transfer of the products from one department to another of Standard Oil, netted it two profits at the expense of taxpayers. Standard Français du Pétrole, a French company 83% owned by the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey, bought $4,020,210 worth of products from the Esso Export Corporation, a wholly owned subsidiary of Standard Oil, in the same type of deal. Other subsidiaries of the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey throughout the world engage in the same type of transactions with their mother companies at the expense of the American taxpayers. Les Raffineries de la Vacuum Oil bought from Socony Vacuum Oil Co., its parent company, $2,249,877 worth of products under the same conditions. War was such a lucrative racket that the Rockefellers saw fit to initiate one in Korea through their newly established global organization in New York that was created to fulfill the dream of Cecil John Rhodes.